So, good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's live webinar on sales strategies for startups, organized by Ujjain Incubation Center. हर स्टार्टअप की ग्रोथ जर्नी में सेल्स एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल होता है. इट इज द बैकबोन ऑफ एवरी सक्सेसफुल स्टार्टअप. And today's session will help us understand how the right sales strategies can drive growth, build customer trust, and create long term success. We are honored to have with us Mr. Ratish Pandey, founder of Ethique Advisory and a certified action coach, who brings valuable industry experience and practical insights in the field of business growth and sales development. So, without wasting much time, we'll start the session. And before that, participants, you can drop your questions in the chat box. We'll take them after the session. So, I would like to invite Ratish sir to begin the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Muskan, and thank you so much to Ujjain Incubation Center for having me here. Really a pleasure. बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है यहाँ. और आई एम होपिंग कि जो लोग ज्वाइन किए हैं इस कॉल को वो थोड़ा कुछ सीख के लेके जाएंगे. मुस्कान ने कहा कि हर स्टार्टअप की जर्नी में सेल्स एक अहम भूमिका निभाता है. मैं ये कहूँगा कि हर बिजनेस की जर्नी में सेल्स बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट भूमिका निभाता है. So in our part of when we coach entrepreneurs, we say very simply, if you're in business, you are in sales. So you can't run away from sales. और बहुत लोग हैं जो जिनको मैं जानता हूँ, बहुत सारे लोग हैं entrepreneurs जो बन गए entrepreneurs and then they say, look, I don't know how to sell. And I tell them, selling is not what you need to learn. What you need to learn is follow the process. अगर आप सेल्स का प्रोसेस जानते हैं तो बिक्री अपने आप हो जाती है. So with that, let's start with this session. As Muskan mentioned, we have about, and I have about content for about 35-40 minutes, which is the core content. And then after that, I'm open to questions, and Muskan will be happy to sort of moderate them for us. एक चीज आप ये समझ लो कि सेल्स जो है बहुत ही वास्ट सब्जेक्ट है. आज का जो पहला सेशन है, दिस इज जस्ट द स्टार्टर. हर एक एलिमेंट सेल्स का जो है दैट इटसेल्फ कैन बी 2, 3, 4, 5 webinars long. So what we'll do is we're starting this off today, and I'm sure Ujjain Incubation Center will come back to you with more nuances, more details on selling. So let's start with this, and then from there you can look at where you are. And in the end, what am I going to share? I'm going to share some key strategies. Look at them, and then see where you're missing out. And hopefully, by the end of the 1 hour that we have today, you will pick up some learnings. That's the objective of this call, right? Learnings. So with that, सबसे पहला सवाल यही होता है कि why do startups struggle with sales? बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली जो स्टार्टअप फाउंडर होता है ना, बहुत जोश होता है, बहुत दम होता है, एकदम एनर्जी होती है. सो इट्स नॉट दैट दे डोंट लैक एफर्ट, दे हैव टन्स ऑफ एफर्ट. द क्वेश्चन इज द एफर्ट इन द राइट डायरेक्शन? दैट्स द की. सो दे लूज बिकॉज सेलिंग इज इनकंसिस्टेंट. कोई सिस्टम नहीं है उनके पास, दे आर नॉट फॉलोइंग अ प्रोसेस. उनकी पिच क्या है? बहुत टाइम startup founders सोचते हैं that their pitch is very smart, it's the right pitch. But when you really start uncovering and start asking questions, you realize that the pitch really is not as sharp as it's supposed to be. And then because you're starting off and you're looking at किसी भी तरह कहीं से भी बिक्री हो जाए, so you open up and you think that I can sell in as many segments and will have offers here also, this also, that also. यहाँ पे भी opportunity, यहाँ पे भी opportunity. And because of that, you sort of fall flat because you can't focus on all the segments that are in front of you always, right? And the last piece, which is most important, कि अगर आप अपने स्टार्टअप के सीईओ हो, चीफ एवरीथिंग ऑफिसर हो, तो सेल्स जो है ना वो रिपीटेबल नहीं होता. फिर हर चीज़ आपके डेस्क पे आती है, आप हर चीज़ जो नई चीज़ आ रही है उसको नए ढंग से डील कर रहे हो। सो व्हाट बिकम्स इम्पॉर्टेंट इज कि आप जो है एक प्रोसेस फॉलो करो, स्क्रिप्ट फॉलो करो, बहुत सारी चीज़ें आज हम जानेंगे और सीखेंगे। एंड द होल आइडिया इज कि इफ यू फॉलो दैट प्रोसेस, everything falls into place, and it actually releases a lot of time from your desk. And that's also important, because as startup founders you have far many other greater things to do than just follow on the sales process. So lot of times lot of people feel that कि sales मतलब ये कि मैं आपको कन्विंस कर दूंगा कि आप मेरा प्रोडक्ट खरीदो या सर्विस खरीदो. We believe sales is actually helping professionally helping somebody to buy. So basically, you're not selling, but you've put your products and services and put them across in such a way that the other person says, okay, yes, Mr. Startup Founder, I'm ready to buy your product or service. So when you look at the definition of sales, how we put it is very simple: professionally helping people to buy. And how do you do that is what we will look at today. So sales also is, of course, identifying the right customer. And a lot of times you spend a lot of energy in focusing on a particular lead prospect, and you realize, अरे यार ये तो customer ही नहीं था शुरू से हमारा. Or trying to diagnose a problem which you can't solve. So diagnosing the right problem, offering a clear solution. Absolutely, your solution has to be crystal clear in front of the customer. This is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do. And then finally, when you're in consultative kind of a mode, when you're helping them to buy, you need to create urgency, because basically the concept is as simple as that. If you're not creating urgency for the customer to buy now, the customer gets more time. When the customer gets more time, what happens? Two things happen. One, customer has a set amount of money in his or her wallet, and that money in the wallet can go to somebody else, some other purchases, or it can even go to your competitor. So focus and build on creating that urgency. And lastly, of course, close with confidence, because ultimately you're not selling, you're solving a problem that your prospect or customer lead has. Remember that always. If you're solving their problem, they will come ahead and buy from you. If you're trying to convince them to buy something, then you will come across as a very pushy salesperson in your face, which may or may not succeed all the time. सो स्टार्टअप सेल्स फ्रेमवर्क जो है ना, वो 5 स्टेप हैं हमारे सेल्स इंजन में, और इन्हीं 5 को आज देखेंगे. टारगेटिंग, पोजिशनिंग, पाइपलाइन, प्रोसेस और परफॉर्मेंस. टारगेटिंग मतलब किसको बेचना है, हु आर यू गोइंग टू सेल टू, व्हाट इज योर टारगेट ऑडियंस. मार्केटिंग में से एक बहुत ही अच्छा नाम दिया है, जो हर जगह आजकल आप सुनते होंगे, ICP, आइडियल कस्टमर प्रोफाइल. So, who are you targeting? Identifying that initially early on becomes a very important aspect. Then is positioning yourself. You know, the prospect has the opportunity to buy from you or from three, four, five, six other people. Why should they buy from you? What is that differentiator that you're building, bringing to the table? And then pipeline, building a pipeline की prospects आपके पास आएंगे कैसे. सो वो भी एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट अप्रोच हो जाती है. आज के प्रेजेंटेशन में हम उसके बारे में भी थोड़ी बात करेंगे. और फिर आ जाता है प्रोसेस. क्या है आपका प्रोसेस, हाउ डू डील्स मूव, what should be your sales process, because lot of times we don't focus on it. I have seen a lot of business owners, startup founders not focusing on the process कि मेरे पास लीड आई, उसको मुझे क्या करना है, क्या चीज़ कब भेजनी है, what is the customer touch point, what is the customer journey with us, at what stage what needs to be sent. All that needs to be really laid down clearly in front, so that you know exactly and your team knows exactly कि कहाँ पे क्या है. Once you have that, The best thing is once you have a process in place, you can start measuring it. बिकॉज इम्प्रूवमेंट तभी होती किसी चीज़ की जब आप उसे मेजर करें. अगर आप मेजर नहीं करेंगे तो इम्प्रूवमेंट कर ही नहीं सकते आप उसकी. सो फोकस ऑन दीज 5 थिंग्स दैट वी टॉक अबाउट एंड एज वी विल गो अलॉन्ग द प्रेजेंटेशन हम इन पांचों के बारे में बात करेंगे. सो स्ट्रैटेजी नंबर 1 है चूज अ निश. ठीक है ना. बेसिकली व्हाट इज इट दैट यू आर ऑफरिंग. the biggest mistake that we make is because early on जब हम शुरू में अपना स्टार्टअप चालू कर रहे होते हैं and we are desperately looking for some kind of a revenue, we believe that our product and service is for everybody. सबको बेच देंगे, कुछ तो बेच ही देंगे, right? The idea is not that. The idea is your product cannot be useful for everybody and anybody in the world. You really need to really focus on come up with something which is really niche, targeted, so that you are exactly addressing your target audience, which is, and for example, uh, a startup may say our product is useful for any business. Whereas instead of that, if you really sharpen your niche, you can say we help mid-size retail chains reduce inventory errors by 40%. So then you've really created a niche that what am I targeting? I'm targeting, in this case, mid-size retail chains. And I'm also offering a solution for their inventory so that they are able to actually, the real benefit when you reduce inventory errors by 40% is the real benefit is improved cash flow for that business. So really looking at the feature and the benefit that you offer and the value in the end you bring in front of the customer really makes the difference. So again, just look at this. When you look at just creating the niche, identifying your ICP, identifying what is the feature, value and benefit proposition for your product and services becomes a big area as you further unravel this. But we'll not delve into that today. And I'm sure Muskan here will set up another brilliant webinar for you guys to take you through all these next level. So look at a simple example that I have, and this is actually a lot of presentations you would see Domino's example, and the reason why you see that example is because Domino's is a successful company, and people definitely give examples of successful companies as to how they became successful. Now, if I have to ask you today, is Domino's the best-selling pizza in town? No, it is not. But what's Domino's niche? Domino's niche is very simple. You are hungry, you order Domino's, 30 minutes, you have food at your doorstep, guaranteed. And therefore, today, Domino's focuses on that niche, delivery in 30 minutes. They really are not that focused that they need to be the best quality or best tasting pizza in town. No, that's not their niche. Their niche is very simple: 30 minutes, pizza at your desk, or it's free. And that's how they have put together uh, their niche, and that's how they become successful globally. So anywhere in the world, Domino's, 30 minutes, you get a pizza. So if you're traveling to Western world, anywhere, Singapore, you order a Domino's, 30 minutes, you'll have it. Think of it, such a powerful statement they have. Okay, then we move to the next. What is it that you're offering? Why you? जो पोजिशनिंग वाली बात थी ना, कि एंड वो जो वाई यू वाली बात है वो ये है कि क्या आपका स्ट्रॉन्ग वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन है. दिस एक्सरसाइज ऑनेस्टली इफ यू रियली डू इट एकदम शिद्दत से करेंगे आप, तो व्हाट यू विल रियलाइज इज दैट जस्ट दिस आइडेंटिफाइंग दिस वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन may take the founders a good 2-3 day solid workshop to really fine tune as to what is it that I'm offering. Because ultimately सबसे बड़ी चीज यहाँ पे क्या है स्ट्रॉन्ग वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन में, कि इट इज दिस वैल्यू प्रोपोजिशन दैट makes you stand apart. And the more you stand apart from anybody else in the market, the more you create an economic moat for your business. And the more you create an economic moat for your business, the more sales you can generate, right? And more profitability you can generate. So, what is important for you, all the startup founders, actually, even every entrepreneur who is on this call and will probably listen to this webinar later on also on YouTube? What is important is identifying that strong value proposition, that niche that nobody else in the market is offering. For that, actually, ideally, you need to look at competitive analysis, doing a strong competitive analysis. कौन क्या कर रहा है, क्या बेच रहा है, कैसे बेच रहा है, what is their communication, and then you figure out what are you strong in, and then how do you communicate that in the marketplace. This is where, once you've identified that strong value proposition, then comes the effect and the real work of the marketing communication team to communicate that value proposition. So, and I have in front of you some examples, right? Bad pitches, we provide HR automation software. What is it that you do? We provide HR automation software. Now, that doesn't tell a prospect anything, because HR automation software is provided by probably thousands of companies today, right? A good pitch is, again, this is where you're quickly offering some difference, and you're also offering a benefit to the customer, which the customer can prospect can see. We help HR teams reduce hire time by 30% in 60 days. Now imagine that, that sort of hits the prospect hard. Okay, yeah, if I am to hire 100 employees, then actually, I and if I'm able to get a 30% less time, then that makes a huge difference to my organization's speed to action on the ground. And then, so basically, what's the winning formula when you're looking at a value proposition? Basically, we help whatever be the customers achieve X amount result by solving this pain using so and so method. So when you look at this approach, the winning formula, you will realize that there is so much power in these statements, that that is where a lot of times the customers stand up and say, yeah, I want to talk to you. I would not want to talk to other people that have knocked my door. So what is important is for us to understand that it is that strong value proposition that makes you stand apart, build your economic moat, and the higher your economic moat, the better your sales and the better your profitability. तीसरी चीज हो जाती है कि हाउ डू यू मेक इट इजी फॉर कस्टमर्स टू बाय फ्रॉम यू, which is ultimately what is called a minimum viable product, MVP, MVO, minimum value viable offer, whatever you may call it, but basically MVP ka kya khel hai. And very simply, right, try and sell something which is very easy for customers to buy, right? So instead of selling a full blown solution, you have a large customer, and you believe, Array, I can sell my full enterprise solution or my all my products to them. Remember, if you're a startup, or even if you are not a startup, but you're pitching to a large company, the large company is not going to give you a huge order on the first go, because they are going to test you out. And the easiest way to test you out is when you sell a solution that is easy for them to buy, and then once that solution they buy, they're satisfied with it, then you can continue to upsell and do a far more, many more greater things. So, basically looking at, instead of your full solution, you sell a pilot, you sell a paid trial, can sell a diagnostic, you can sell a workshop, or you can sell a starter pack. So think of how you can position your product and service in such a way that it becomes easy for the person to buy, so that they can test out, number one. And number two, if you're really strong on what you've sold them, the small little thing, then the customer will come back for more. And I have a great example here, uh, but before that, why does MVP work? MVP works because it reduces buyer's risk. जो मैंने बताया ना, large company or any company that is buying from you for the first time would want to be sure that they are not risking a large amount of money or resources or an enterprise piece with you till they are not sure about what you are offering, and is your product really holding the promise that really given them. So uh, the other piece what MVP does is it increases the speed of decision, because छोटी चीज़ है, छोटा इन्वेस्टमेंट है, तो आपने बहुत आसानी से बेच दिया और उनकी तरफ से भी डिसीजन जल्दी आ जाता है. And the last piece, of course, is if that small little thing works well for your prospect and sort of that prospect converts into a customer, then it gives them proof and testimonial fast कि हाँ, इस स्टार्टअप से लिया, बहुत अच्छा काम किया उन्होंने, let's go ahead and take the next leap. The best example that I can give you is Zoom. Zoom, those of you who were sort of really caught in working during COVID times would realize how Zoom really took off. But what did Zoom do? What even Zoom does today? First 40 minutes is free, right? So basically, they made it very easy for people to come onto the Zoom platform like that. No cost. Come on in. But if you really want to use Zoom services next up, then you start paying, right? So the first next level is, let's say, 18,000 bucks a year, and then the further level up is $60 per month kind of a scenario, which sort of really translates to about 75,000 rupees a year. But what they've really done is their MVP is very simple. Zoom Basic free for first 40 minutes. I imagine how many of us are on Zoom because of that simple approach that they have. Make the MVP so low that, and you try it, you're comfortable with it, then you get stuck with Zoom, the stickiness factor builds in, and then you say, okay, why don't I now upgrade to the next level, and so on and so forth. So really, what startups really need is they don't need more features initially. What you need is faster buying decisions. And faster buying decisions come when you have a base level minimum MVP that people can buy very quickly and fast. The next is strategy number 4, which is how do you build a pipeline? Now, when you're building sales pipeline, चार तरीके हैं लीड्स आने के आपके पास, राइट? या तो आप आउटबाउंड जाओगे, आउटबाउंड में आप ईमेलिंग करोगे, कोल्ड कॉल्स करोगे, लिंक्डइन करोगे, बहुत सारी चीज़ें कर सकते हो आप आउटबाउंड में. एंड देन देर इज इनबाउंड. इनबाउंड में आप सोशल मीडिया मार्केटिंग करोगे, एसईओ करोगे, कंटेंट डालोगे सोशल मीडिया पे, hoping people like the content and then they click and say, okay, contact me and things like that. So there is an inbound lead that comes. And the other piece is partnerships. Partnerships can be कि आपने चैनल बना लिया, आपने डीलर डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर बना लिए, या आपने एक रेफरल चैनल भी क्रिएट कर लिया, आपको रेफरल से बिजनेस आ रहा है. And then is paid ads, and paid ads only after validation, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. कि why paid ads only after validation, right? So early stage जो स्टार्टअप्स हैं उनका हमारी रिकमेंडेशन बड़ी सिंपल रहती है, फोकस ऑन आउटबाउंड पार्टनरशिप्स एंड रेफरल्स. उसके आगे इनिशियली आपको फोकस नहीं करना चाहिए, बिकॉज there is a entire human psychology of buying. That is what we'll talk going forward. But what is important is early stage startups focus on outbound, focus on partnerships and referrals. That is where you'll get success. Because ultimately, pipeline is the oxygen of your business, right? जितनी ज़्यादा आपको ऑक्सीजन मिलेगी, जितनी ज़्यादा आपकी बड़ी पाइपलाइन हो जाएगी, right? So, and this is where, and this marketing principle of AIDA, a lot of research, friends, was done in the early 60s on human psychology, and a lot of those principles still 70 years later stand true to the test of time. They have stood true to the test of time. And the idea principle was a marketing principle that really was built in 1960s earlys, and funda bada acronym hai, talks about attention, interest, desire and action, right? So basically, when you're marketing, first thing is you have to bring attention to people, right? Capture the customer's interest through appealing visuals, compelling messages. कि जी हम ये कर रहे हैं, ये हमारा product है, ये हमारी service है. Just the attention initially. Once people start seeing and you start capturing the customer's interest, that is where the interest comes in, and that interest brings engagement, right? So engage the customer by providing more information about products and services. And then is the desire. Once people have A and they've crossed the A and I, that is when the desire builds in. Build a strong desire for the product by highlighting its benefits and features. That's where you go down to the next level. कि चलो अब this is the stage where the customer is truly interested and there's a desire in buying those products and services. So आज की तारीख में when you look at this IDA, the top of funnel, middle of funnel, all this, the top of funnel, middle of funnel, tofu, mofu, whatever concepts you hear, they all follow the IDA principle, nothing else, right? And then finally, the final piece is action, which is really encourage the customer to take the desired action, which is buying your products and services. So, paid validation, picking back on the earlier slide, paid validation works only once you have crossed the first three steps: attention, interest, and desire. So, if you believe that you can immediately start selling on a social media platform by doing performance marketing or paid validations, believe me, folks, it will be very difficult. So, because human psychology is such that people love to first get the attention, show interest, have the desire, and then take action. So, really focus on this entire process. This is the process that has stood the test of time, and therefore, paid validation or paid leads will take some time for you to generate, and only after you've done the A and I and D, then only the paid validation works. Let's move forward. Strategy number 5, sales process, right? और जो मैंने शुरू में कहा था ना कि revenue is not luck, sales लाना is not luck, it is just following the system. I have seen it in my career, 30 plus years of career, that those companies which have a simple sales process that is being followed are successful always. So, first step is for your startup, for your business, create that sales process. बहुत important है कि step 1 क्या है, 2 क्या है, 3 क्या है, 4 क्या है, 5 क्या है, 6 क्या है, and so on and so forth. In my business, I have a 15-step sales process. In that 15-step sales process, every person who's involved exactly knows what their role is. So everything works through the 15 steps till we get a closure. Similarly, in your business, in your startup journey, you need to create that sales process always. Because why it is important is one, once we have a process in place, it starts getting followed. The more you follow, the more sharper that process gets, and the more learning you get from the engagement that you have with your prospects. Now, what does that process and what that process may include? It may include standardized outbound scripts. Everybody who speaks to a prospect from the startup should have the same script, the same communication, the same messaging. Because if people hear the same messaging from one, two, three, four, five people of the same startup, then they're convinced about it. If you have 4 employees and they are giving 4 different scripts and 4 different messaging to your prospect, believe me, the prospect will get confused as to what he or she is buying from you. So focus on those structured scripts always. Then the next piece is pitch decks for partnerships. Having a standardized canned pitch deck always ready for partnerships is very important. Your dealer, distributor, whichever way you want to, your referral partners, whichever way you want, your pitch deck should always be the same so that everybody in the company offers the same pitch, the same approach, the same questions, right? And then even the answers that you get, the objectional handling and the FAQs, everybody needs to have that document ready with them so that the same FAQs, the same questions get answered the same way. If you will not do that, again the prospect gets confused. What am I trying to do? Who am I speaking to? Is this answer correct or that answer correct? Just and in my experience, I found it myself. You walk into a retail store, you speak to one customer support associate, and this exactly happened to me 3 days back. I walked into a consumer electronics store. I'm based out of Delhi, and right now Delhi is facing a lot of heat. Temperatures a couple of days back hit high for mid 40s. So I walked in to look for a desert cooler. Now I focused on one, got some answers, went back. I said, okay, I'll come back next day and I'll buy. Next day, the same guy was not there. The next person gave me a different set of answers. And as soon as I heard those different set of answers, I was not sure whether I should be buying the product or not. So I went back and ultimately didn't buy the product. So the point I'm trying to make is having FAQs, having objection handling questions exactly the same way becomes very important. And how do you manage that? You manage that with structured, continuous, consistent training. So the sales training piece becomes a very important aspect in this whole activity. And then, of course, is a weekly activity dashboard. Kya kiya? Every sales, and once you have the process in place, and if, for example, in my case, as I mentioned, I have 15 steps in my sales process. I can measure all the 15 steps. How many leads are at step one? How many leads are at step five? How many leads are at step eight? And how many leads are at step 13 ready to be closed? So I need to have that weekly activity dashboard always in front of me. And believe me, sales is all about process, process, process. वो नहीं कर रहे आप, तो you're really missing out on being successful in selling. So focus on those sales as a process, not as something that you need to be frightened about. Follow the process and everything will happen. आज की तारीख में टेक्नोलॉजी बहुत मदद करती है हमें ये सब प्रोसेस फॉलो करने के लिए, और इसके लिए बहुत सारे CRM टूल्स हैं, हबस्पॉट है, ज़ोहो है, सेल्स फोर्स है, पाइप ड्राइव भी है, बहुत सारे हैं, बहुत सारे सेल्स के टूल्स हैं। कुछ ऐसे भी टूल्स हैं विच आर वेरी इंडस्ट्री स्पेसिफिक, कि आप इस इंडस्ट्री में तो आप ये वाला सॉफ्टवेयर ले लीजिए, बिकॉज दोज पीपल हैव रियली created a niche for that industry and are operating in that industry. As you look at your industry, I'm sure you'll find the right CRM tool. But again, most of these tools, HubSpot, Zoho, Salesforce, Pipedrive, all are customizable. So आप जो चाहें यूज करें, but जो भी यूज करें, then once you get on and select the tool, believe me, you have to follow the tool and really focus on it. Lot of entrepreneurs I've seen, uh, when we go and meet them for coaching, they say, "Oh, sir, yes, we have this tool, we have this, we have that." But when you really ask them whether they're really getting any information from all the data that is being put in that on that tool, they are not sure of it, because the tool is there, but they're really not deriving any information from that data that is really being collected in the tool for year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years. So no trends, nothing is being tracked. So once the CRM tools come into play, actually extracting that information from those tools really is the key to success. And now that once you've followed and put a process in place, this really is the key: measurement. Because ultimately, you can only improve what you measure. So, you know, it's so very interesting that as soon as you start putting measurement tools in place, the staff actually starts and your team will start improving basis that measurements and those tools being put in place. So बहुत सारी और measurement के बहुत सारे dashboards होते हैं. If you're using one of these CRM tools, those tools definitely will give you those dashboards. And then there are certain terms that सबने सुनी है. CAC, cost to acquire one customer, yeah, conversion rate, right? The percentage of leads that convert into customers. LTV, basically long term value, so revenue per customer over time. Yeah, retention rate, customers who we have retained, who have bought again, or churn customer who really drop out from a service or product. So, really, all these terms are there. And again, आई डोंट नीड टू गो टू मच ऑन दिस. आज की तारीख में गूगल है. ये सब आप एक टैब एक सवाल पूछोगे तो गूगल सब आपको दे देगा कि ये दीज आर द थिंग्स दैट यू नीड टू वरी अबाउट. बट व्हाट यू रियली नीड टू वरी अबाउट हियर्स focus on the key sales measurements for your business, not blindly follow anybody else. So, if you are a retail store or if you're looking at setting up a retail store, revenue per square foot becomes a big measure. Aapka inventory churn becomes a turnover becomes a big measure. All those things. So figure out what is the real 2 or 3 key points that you need to measure in your business, in your selling process. That really is what you need to focus and keep a tab on. Don't blindly follow जो सारी दुनिया कर रही है, because your startup is individual, it is different, and if you have a unique selling and a differentiation point, then you will have a unique measurement uh, tool metric that will be unique to your business. So focus on those that really matter. So, as we wind down on my presentation and we take on more questions, really, this is the 7 golden rules that you really need to follow. And in case those of you are online or want to take a picture of this slide, this is really the key, right? First one, pick a niche. Always pick a niche, hold on to that, and really work on creating that fine differentiation that you are there. So, have that ICP clear, have your differentiation point clear, and then, as we always say, sell outcomes, not features. So, outcome, and for example, going back to what I talked about, an example I gave HR software, if the outcome gives 30% less time and time to hire, that's an outcome that you're selling, not the feature of that product. And that outcome is what most of your prospects look for. They don't look for your features. They look कि मेरे को अगर मैं आपकी प्रोडक्ट और सर्विस लूँगा तो मेरे को फ़ायदा क्या होगा. That outcome is what they're looking for. So if you're able to position an outcome well, believe me, sales will happen far easier. And then of course making it easy to say yes. Have that product, एक छोटा product है which becomes easy for customers to try a product and service. And as soon as they try a product and service, you know, a company the Kevin Care है अभी भी, those are the company that pioneered into those small shampoo sachet. And what that did was that really changed the way the, the entire industry started operating. Because with that small 1.5 rupees shampoo sachet, they could reach to so many people, and so many people could try their products and services. Imagine that's, and this is actually a unique thing that India brought to the world. So really, Kevin Care did a phenomenal job in sort of that making it easy to say yes. Because if I can't afford a, say, let's a 300 rupee shampoo bottle, but I can definitely afford possibly a 1.5 rupee sachet to sort of test it out or shampoo my hair. Build the pipeline daily. Absolutely. Focus on daily pipeline. How are you going to use all the 4 methods to build the pipeline? And then ask great questions. The more questions you ask, open ended questions, the better engagement you will have with your prospects and better closure possibilities. Follow up consistently always. एक रिसर्च ये कहती है कि lot of people stop following up after the second call. At the same time, maximum closures, 80% of the closures actually happen after the fifth call. So if you're not uh, following a prospect to death, you're making a grave mistake. So keep following. Once you have a prospect in hand, believe me, follow it to death. If somebody is not picking up the phone today, tomorrow, no problems, follow up after next week. So have that cadence of follow, and you can build that once you have the tools, the the HubSpots and the Zohos, which can actually remind you when to follow. So all that cadence can be built in. Lastly, as I mentioned, if you will not measure your numbers, you can't make a sale. Can't make your numbers and improve. So focus on tracking your numbers weekly, daily, monthly, howsoever your business needs it. Focus on that, and you will always see improvement come through. With that, Muskan, we can go over to questions. If there are any, happy to answer them.
Okay, first of all, thank you, sir, for such a knowledge packed session. And now we can take some questions. So, first question we have is that how can we get our first paying clients?
Okay, so how can you get your first paying client? Is I can answer it from two different lenses. One, of course, uh, you are is your M is your and second, this other lens is, do you have an MVP or minimum value proposition for that client? If you have those two things, I can assure you, you can get your first paying client very quickly. So if you don't have your ICP clear and if you don't have your MVP in place, focus on those two things first. You can, and uh, I'm sure this question is coming from a startup founder. So you can go to other founders and have a, you know 1 hour 2 hour call, and all of you can discuss, and these founders can help you at the incubation center figure out what your MVP would be, what your ICP would be, and that is the best peer learning that you will get. Of course, there'll be mentors on the ground, but if you'll all get put your heads together, you'll get a lot of answers out how to get your first client, paying client.
Okay. So, we have one more question. How long does it usually take to build a stable sales pipeline?
It depends on your product and service, whatever you're offering. Some products and services have a longer gestation period. For example, let's say if you're in the construction business, it'll take you longer time to fill up your pipeline, right? But if you are in a product that can be consumed on a daily basis, then the pipeline or the time to start filling up a pipeline is much shorter. But what you need to really focus on is what is the right approach to take it. Everything comes at and in sequence in this entire selling process. Follow the IDA: attention, interest, desire, and action. And that, for let's say a large gestation period kind of a product, with the IDA will be longer. For quick service, quick, let's say if you open a restaurant, obviously, if if you look, if your startup is in the food business, and if your food quality is consistent, believe me, in 60 days you could actually be running a pretty strong business. So it depends on your product and service and how you focus on it. But again, remember, AIDA is the core for human psychology when people buy and take act to buy your products.
Okay, sir. So thank you so much, sir. इतने insightful और knowledge packed session देने के लिए आज का वेबिनार में जो प्रैक्टिकल सेल्स स्ट्रैटेजीज रियल लाइफ एग्जांपल्स और बिजनेस ग्रोथ इनसाइट्स आपने शेयर किए हैं वो डेफिनेटली हम सभी स्टार्टअप और पार्टिसिपेंट्स के लिए बहुत बेनिफिशियल रहेंगे. And I would like to thank all the participants also for joining this session. We hope this session added value to your entrepreneur journey and inspired you to implement this learning in your startups. So, on behalf of Ujjain Incubation Center, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to Ratish sir for sharing his time and expertise with us. Thank you so much, sir. And until then, everyone stay connected with us for more upcoming opportunities. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Muskan. Thank you so much. And to all the startup founders who are on this call or will be on this call, believe me, you're on the right path. Just focus and sharpen your skills and keep the energy going, and you'll be successful. Thank you.